Now, this morning here on Faith Alive, I'm delighted to welcome to the programme our next guest, who is Father Brian Grogan. Now, Brian is a Jesuit priest who will be familiar to many of the groups here in the west of Ireland who have been involved in prayer guidance, and I know there are many of them indeed who are very involved in this whole area of ministry. And next weekend he'll be doing a day workshop in Knock on the title The Joy of the Gospel, exploring Pope Francis's call to us. Just before we talk about that, I want to just talk in general to Brian first this morning, but begin as always, Brian, by saying you're very welcome to Faith Alive.
Thanks very much indeed, Monica. Okay, it's good to be on.
Great. Well, as I say, you're a Jesuit, and I'm always struck when I talk to Jesuits that they're all so different. They're all in different ministries. Can you tell us just a little bit about the ministry that you've been involved in over the years, Brian?
Well, centrally, I've been involved in spirituality. I was running Manresa Retreat Centre in the 1980s. Then I've been involved in writing on Ignatian spirituality, a book on Ignatius and so forth. And I got involved in Knock around about 1990 when the people in charge there came along to Manresa where I was working and said to me, "There's something missing in Knock and we want you to help us to find it." And that turned out to be that if you think of a religion as having an institutional, an intellectual and a mystical dimension, the Church in Knock felt itself very strong on the institutional level, reasonably okay on the intellectual level, but weak on the mystical level, by which one means that people weren't getting a deep sense of their own relationship with God. And it was out of that then that we decided to start the prayer guidance ministry. The idea being that we would just help in a simple way to introduce people to the Jesus of the New Testament and then let them at it, as it were. So that's what's been going on there in the prayer guidance ministry and around the West for the last 25, 26 years.
Yeah, I'm very aware that this whole area of, prayer guidance, spiritual direction has really taken off with people. That one-to-one experience seems to help people to connect with that sense of God in their lives in a way that maybe traditional liturgies don't quite do it for them.
That is true, and it's a difficult thing. You really have to work hard at liturgy to make it relevant to all the people who want to participate in it. And that's something that the Church has yet to face into, I think. But on the level of engaging in personal prayer, a lot of people would feel they didn't know how to go about that. And we offer simple ways and modes of encouragement to help people believe that they have a relationship with God, at least God has a relationship with them, and that they can develop and foster this relationship through frequent prayer, whether it be short or long, but a sense of the fact that God is interested in me and I am happy to respond to God's interest and try to become the kind of person that God would want me to be, or to develop my potential to the full. Working in Milltown Institute over the last 40 years, more or less, has been one of the joys of my life. When I did theology myself, I was so taken by it that I said, if I have a chance, I would like to share the riches of what I've been given with people who don't have access to years and years of study and whatnot. So that's what I've tried to do, and I've found terrific response among people, basically on the level of adult faith formation. I've worked in that in various places. I spent a number of years working in Belfast.
Great. Well, I'm sure much of that will be in the background when you come to Knock next weekend for this workshop on the encyclical, The Joy of the Gospel. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you'll be doing and what people maybe could expect?
Firstly, there'd be something about the Church, dealing with the Church as it has been and the Church as Pope Francis is trying to make it be. I think the Church has often been seen as static, involved in maintenance, institutional, closed off, inviting people to come to church, but the church won't go out to them so much, warning people that outside the church there's no salvation, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Now, what Pope Francis is trying to do is to bring us all back to the Gospels and perhaps the Acts of the Apostles, and that terrific buzz that there was around at that time in sharing the good news. So the church is to become porous, it's meant to be outgoing. It's a bit like the Peace Corps that President Kennedy started up in the 1960s. You're going out to people rather than expecting people to come to you. You're meeting them where they're at the crossroads. The people who are walking away from the church were alienated. So he talks about the church as being a field hospital. Now, we would never, I think, have thought of that.
It seems, in a way, it's a wonderful image, and it seems to have appealed widely to people. And yet there's, I suppose, a huge challenge, not just for church and church people, but also for the laity. I mean, their role is changing too.
It struck me that there's a new form of Christian identity called for here, in a sense. It's a bit like a person who's always been on the subs bench in a football team and suddenly gets called up and is enabled to play in Croke Park, kind of thing. The letter of the Pope, the Apostolic Exhortation, is certainly written to bishops and priests, but centrally it's for lay people. And it's a dream that the Pope has that every Christian would become, in their own particular way, in their own circumstances, an evangelizer. So the laity, according to this, they're to be galvanized into action, as it were. That Christianity, where before I think we thought of it more as a spectator sport, now everyone is being invited to polish up their gifts and blow the dust off their trumpet, as they say, and use whatever they have to share the good news with the rest of the world.
Great. Well, I've no doubt, Brian, those are some of the areas that you'll be covering with the group who'll gather next weekend for that one-day workshop in Knock, as I say, called simply The Joy of the Gospel. Just before we finish, Brian, I'm very aware that, during the week we had the death of your fellow Jesuit, Father Michael Paul Gallagher. Again, he was well known as a writer, as a theologian. He taught at UCD for, I think, over 20 years. Many people were saddened to hear that he had passed away.
Yes, and he was from Sligo himself, Collooney, and a person of quite exceptional capacity and wisdom, plus a capacity to articulate what he understood and present it in a gentle and yet compelling fashion, I think. He wrote a lovely little book once called The Disturbing Freshness of Christ. And it's just the title there that catches the heart and the imagination. But it's very sad for us, and yet I suppose if Shakespeare is right who says that ripeness is all, certainly Michael had reached that ripeness and is ready for all the fun and joy that must be attendant on being with God and shaping the world from another dimension.
OK, well, we remember him indeed in our prayers, and all the Jesuits this weekend, and a man who, as you say, has roots here in the west of Ireland, and lots of fond memories of him from pilgrims who he spoke to at Knock Shrine over the years.
Thank you very much, Monica, for that.
There were people of all ages gathered round the gable wall, poor and humble men and women, little children that you called. We are gathered here before you, and our hearts are just the same, filled with joy at such a vision, as we praise your name. Golden Rose, Queen of Ireland, all my cares and troubles cease, as I kneel with love before but the truth in in silence lies. So I gaze upon your vision, and the truth I try to find. Here I stand with John the teacher, and with Joseph at your side, and I see the Lamb of God on the altar glorified. Golden rose, Queen of Ireland, all my cares and troubles cease as I kneel with love before you, Lady of Love, my Queen of Peace.
Carmel Horan there and Our Lady of Knock. And if you'd like to go to that workshop that will take place on Saturday the 28th of November, you have to book on 09493 75321. And indeed on the Knockshrine website you'll get all the information on the new faith renewal programmes taking place there.